In the dust and heat of the frontier, a gathering turned into a spectacle of cruelty. A crowd of settlers, traders, and wandering drifters surrounded a makeshift platform where women stood in chains. The auctioneer's voice echoed with chilling indifference. Select any woman for free. Among them stood a young Comanche girl, her wrists bound by iron shackles, her eyes filled with silent defiance. When a cowboy pointed directly at her, the moment wasn't just about one choice. It was a reflection of a dark era where human dignity was bartered away and injustice was cloaked in the guise of law. The mid-1800s frontier was a place of contradictions, freedom for some, oppression for others. While settlers spoke of liberty, expansion, and opportunity, native peoples were hunted, displaced, and enslaved. In towns that sprung up along dusty trails, human life could be priced lower than a horse, and entire families were torn apart under the banner of civilization. On this particular day, a group of captured native women were paraded before men who believed themselves entitled to choose wives as if selecting cattle. The Comanche girl, barely more than a teenager, stood out, not because of weakness, but because of the fire in her gaze. She refused to bow her head, even as iron bit into her wrists and strangers whispered about her as property. The cowboy who pointed to her was no hero. He represented the settlers' claim to dominance, their twisted belief that their culture gave them the right to possess others. Yet, in his gesture, an entire story unfolded. A story about greed, power, and the deliberate erasure of entire peoples. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a political statement, an act of violence wrapped in normalcy. And for those who witnessed it, whether they cheered or looked away, silence became complicity. The gathering was both spectacle and warning. Other women stood beside the Comanche girl, Kiowa, Apache, and Navajo captives. Some trembled, others stared numbly, long since broken by the cycle of raids and captivity. Traders promoted them as prizes, framing them as opportunities for men to claim wives without effort or cost. Each choice was meant to reinforce settler superiority, the idea that native women existed only to serve as commodities, their identities stripped, their heritage dismissed. To select one freely was to claim not only her body, but the dominance of an entire culture. The cowboy's finger lingered in the air. Around him, drunken laughter and approving nods encouraged his decision. But in the crowd, there were others. People whose silence masked unease. They recognized the injustice but dared not speak. Fear of standing against the majority silenced them. The Comanche girl's defiance made her dangerous in their eyes. She embodied resistance, refusing to be reduced to a token of conquest. Even bound, her spirit was unbroken. Her silent stare met the cowboy's, and in that moment, the cruelty of the system was exposed. Not as isolated cruelty, but as a broader political machine designed to break entire nations. The cowboy's gesture wasn't merely about desire. It symbolized the larger machinery of colonization, the land taken without treaties, the families shattered, the traditions destroyed. Choosing her for free wasn't just an act of individual cruelty. It was the embodiment of a system where power justified every atrocity. What unsettled the few who dared to truly watch wasn't the cowboy's choice, but the realization that no one would stop it. The law was on his side. The silence of the crowd made it acceptable. And in this silence, injustice thrived. The moment of selection landed like a gavel. The cowboy stepped forward, claiming the shackled Comanche girl as though his entitlement needed no defense. Her chains rattled as she was pulled from the line, her body tethered but her spirit unyielding. A hush fell, not from reverence, but from the weight of inevitability. The girl's stare never wavered, piercing through the bravado of the man who claimed her. For a flicker of a moment, the cowboy faltered, unnerved by her gaze. A reminder that even in chains, she was not conquered. This was the climax of the injustice, the normalization of human ownership. A crowd of men applauded, as if cruelty were celebration. A system built on racial supremacy had made this act not only legal but encouraged. Her resistance, silent though it was, cut deeper than any words could. In that defiance, she bore the weight of every woman, every tribe, every family who had suffered under the system. The cowboy might have thought he was claiming victory, but in truth, his choice only exposed the moral rot at the heart of the society he represented. The story did not end with the cowboy's choice. History tells us that countless Native women were stolen, enslaved, and erased from memory. But within those losses, stories of resistance lived on, whispers of defiance like the fire in the Comanche girl's eyes. This was not simply a tale of the frontier. It was a reflection of politics in its rawest form, the systematic use of power to subjugate and silence others. Every policy that encouraged westward expansion, every treaty broken, every life taken was built upon the same ideology displayed in that single moment of choosing. The shackled girl's gaze became a symbol of unbroken resistance. While the cowboy's hand may have pointed in dominance, history has remembered not him, but the defiance of those who refused to be erased. And so, as we reflect on this story, we must ask, how many injustices today hide behind the same silence? How often do we look away, allowing power to strip others of dignity while convincing ourselves it is normal? The past is not gone. It echoes in policies, in prejudice, in the systems we allow to stand. The cowboy's gesture may belong to another century, but the lesson belongs to us now, because every time silence surrounds injustice, history risks repeating itself.